Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of December 14, 2020. In terms of the stock market direction, I believe that the Monday, the 14th, the stock market may go up. Then it will go down on Tuesday, also on Wednesday and Thursday. But then on Friday, the 18th, it's going to be an eventful day, but I think there is a probability of that the market will actually go up on Friday. So in terms of the specific influences for each of the day of the week, it's going to be an eventful week. So virtually every day of the next week, we may expect some important events to take place. That could be, of course, also market moving events, but generally could also have to do with strong or the important weather events, including strong earthquakes, as well as some protests and geopolitical changes. So not just market moving events, but some instability. And it will actually pick up starting around the 16th of December. And we can expect that to continue through the end of the month. And I guess the peak dates would be, I would say, around 18th through the 24th of December. So for Monday, the 14th, I think, like I said, the Monday market may go up. And regardless of the direction, we may see greater than usual market moves. And in particular, it may have to do, the news may have to do with some sort of important announcements regarding like a legal change, contract, deal, or some negotiation, or perhaps a sale. And that may involve specifically communication and transportation businesses. So some business that involves either with transmitting information and or moving goods or people, especially over long distances and internationally. So the situation or the outcome of this decision or contract or deal may be such that it will facilitate the movement of those goods or shipments across borders, generally speaking. Or there may also be news about sales or some agreements, and in particular they may involve either military, weapons, or sports. So perhaps some news about maybe an athlete, like a prominent athlete is transferred, or a sale or acquisition that involves maybe a sports team, or perhaps there's going to be increased movements of troops across international borders. Then, as I mentioned, second half of December may be fairly eventful, and in particular there might be increased news about various legal decisions, policies, also immigration, international relations, long distance transportation, so anything that's like across the border or via railway especially, and large scale construction projects, or something that's meant to be, maybe it will take years perhaps to build, but will stand maybe for decades. And especially this could be something that involves like large machinery. Either it's like a power plant that produces large machinery, or large scale, I guess, machinery would need to be involved to build whatever that project or projects may be. So something large, pieces of metal, rocks, stone. So it's like something like building a railroad, or digging a tunnel, or constructing a large plant, either, like I said, machinery that's involved in building such a construction project, or the plant itself may be such that it produces machinery, and that's sort of what the output of the plant is. There may also be increased news, and that's for the second half of December, of all sorts of prominent individuals, especially those who are either well-educated, such as professors, judges, or they're involved somehow in international relations, so perhaps diplomats, ambassadors, literally kings, queens, royalty, very wealthy, but like really high sort of top level, I guess, individuals, as well as heads of major corporations, government leaders, or clergy, again, somebody who's well-regarded. We're talking about really high-level individuals, not just somebody who's in the level of maybe a village or something like that. And for such individuals, they may be in the news due to some significant events that either symbolize kind of ending of certain power or relinquishing of the power, and or some project is started, and this could also involve individuals or like rather entities that are leaders in terms of corporations that are established leaders, and especially again communication, transportation. So if events were to occur around December 10th through 17th, we will most likely be hearing about endings of old projects or businesses, or old leaders are stepping down, and for announcements that come around 18th through the 24th of December, we may hear more about things that are started. So maybe, like I said, a large scale, maybe like an airport or railroad or something, some sort of project, or could be a new leader who is again very powerful. For US, the dates of December 14th through 16th may see increased news about sports, military, stock market, casinos, and any businesses that are involved in anything like risky or dangerous. So from like firefighting or car racing, fighting, or anything, like I said, that stock market, I guess, is quite risky as well. And in those areas, the news may involve, again, contracts, sales, some communication, such as an announcement on the social media that somehow is very important, and or news about relocation or trips. So maybe, as I mentioned before, like a transfer. This time it's specifically for US, December 14th through 16th, but maybe like a change, where the athlete is going, perhaps, like I said, transfer of an athlete or movement of troops, or it could be relocation of an office, and this could be maybe a relocation of some headquarters or manufacturing facility, or acquisition of a sports team, or even a change in the leadership of, again, either a sports team or something to do with military or stock market or casinos or some sort of risky businesses. Let's see. And what may occur is that perhaps an old leader or an old team owner may come back, may be invited back, or some other kind of reversal may occur. So perhaps the transfer, of an athlete is back to their original team, or the relocation is back to some sort of office where this company or a project where the project had previously began, I guess. For the 15th, as I mentioned previously, market may go down, and for US, December 15, 16, may see increased news about oil, gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, drugs, navy, wet weather, beverages, movies, religion, etc. All of these Neptunian topics. And again, there may be increased news about sales, negotiations, also transportation of the related materials, or perhaps a kind of spread of something beyond what was expected, which is, spread of, say, the, rain or something, or flood extends further than expected. Or maybe there is an accident that spreads some sort of pollution of some chemical further than expected. Or, of course, perhaps it will coincide with distribution of some vaccines throughout the country, but all those kind of Neptunian businesses may be in the news. And let's see. So the news may also cover in those specific areas in the US some minor obstacles. Maybe there's a public opinion that's split on something. Some people may be, in favor of what's happening. Some people may not like it. So perhaps there is a movie that comes out. And again, movies, of course, fall under Neptune as well. And it's super, famous, not famous, it's super, I guess half of the, population is super much in favor of it, or rather they like it a lot. And the other half is really hates it. So at that time, again, there might be a split decision from the general public. And at the same time, if there are news again about such businesses, there may also be more confusion than usual, where some details are omitted, or it's not clear perhaps where things are going. As I mentioned, there might be something that's spreading, but it's not quite clear what is spreading. Like if there's a chemical spill, what exactly potentially is happening, where things are heading. So 15, 16 in December, those might be somewhat of a difficult days, especially in the US, and market I think will go down on those dates as well. So let's see. And 16th through 30th in general, we may see kind of a switch in, or more evident, I guess, switch in this general feeling of more of like a happy, upbeat kind of a market rally type of mood, to kind of perhaps increase in tensions internationally, increased probability of strong earthquake, military escalations. In terms of the stock market, there may be more of a I wouldn't say somber, but more practical mood with more focus on long-term sort of investments and wealth preservation. And so that may coincide with market continuing, in my opinion, to go down from sometime mid to late November, where we had the exact conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto, which typically would coincide with this inflated sense of kind of optimism and exuberance, and we will be getting away from that conjunction. At the same time, we will be heading towards kind of intensified, more of a difficult aspects. So Jupiter now will be getting closer and closer in conjunction with Saturn, and Saturn tends to put damper on things and kind of focus on things that are more stable and long-term and solid. And then into January, we will be heading into developing square between Saturn and Uranus, which also may bring some difficulties. But starting already mid-December, I think market will be more and more kind of obviously heading down overall as this midterm, mid size, I guess, move that may last at least through January, where there may be another sort of opportunity for the market to turn around, but definitely January looks quite volatile. So let's see. So then on December, I would say especially 18th through 24th, not only can there be these kind of considerations of, okay, what should be the long-term investment, how can we preserve wealth, but there will also be intensification of various either weather events that are somewhat dangerous, and again, it could be like an earthquake, mudslide, etc. But at the same time, there may be increased announcements of various like judgments and laws passed that may affect especially long-distance transportation or immigration or some policies. And those events may trigger or coincide, I guess, in parallel, obviously also, with increased wave of protests, just kind of anger, protests, and even violent attacks or just accidents, which may involve like fires, explosions, etc. Or like I said, mudslides, when things are kind of crashing down, or say mines or tunnels, things where you have this danger of things basically collapsing. And let's see. So those the time where those there's the greatest probability of violent protest or some accidents or earthquakes is particularly high around December 20th through 23rd. So let's see. So on the 17th, on that particular day, there may be increased volatility in the stock market, or rather related to currencies, banks, financial institutions, as well as businesses related to IT, aerospace, electric cars, telecommunications, anything sort of digital or internet-based or high-tech. And moreover, starting on the 16th throughout the 21st, there may be increased focus on any sort of legal cases, legal issues, international affairs, long-distance transportation, higher education, and prominent leaders who are quite well educated, like lawyers, ambassadors, diplomats, professors, judges, etc. And some issue or some status of an existing maybe legal issue may be clarified, or there may be a law passed that again affects those areas, like I said, for example, transportation across borders. So things may be clarified along the lines of like, who is the actual leader officially, legally, or is the sale final, or is the contract, has been legally reached, or what are the exact legal details of a particular agreement, and who can travel internationally with, what papers under what sort of legal, I guess, under what laws. For China, the period from about December 17th through the end of January of 2021, and especially December 25 through the 2nd of January, may see some announcements that will be quite significant, and they will be about some new beginnings for the country. Again, this could be along the lines of like some new vision, some new long-term projects or long-term plans, and they may particularly involve either construction projects or areas related to like IT, aerospace, airlines, or something that's high-tech, networks, power plants, as well as healthcare and veterinary care. So in those areas, there may be announcements about, like I said, new beginnings or some really new long-term, kind of a greater than before projects, and things that are implemented at this time may indeed be kind of quite impressive and be in use or serve, for decades. Also at the same time for China, which is, the 17th of December through early January, there may be increased news on any sort of organizations that, international organizations that China is a part of. So either some changes in basically its status in those organizations, entering new organizations, changing basically, I guess, alliances, or some sort of changes basically that involve not just this one-on-one partnership, but being a part of some larger international groups. And this would be something like Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, or alliances along those lines. Let's see, so on December, I'd say 18th through 23rd, as I mentioned, is particularly maybe tense period. And beyond that, for like the stock market, there we may hear globally increased news about businesses related to IT, aerospace, telecommunications, also social media. Of course, Facebook comes to mind. High-tech, electric cars and electronics, so many things that, again, is digital, based on the internet, involve some sort of networks, and the situations may involve some sort of lawsuits or some regulations imposed on those businesses, or perhaps some discussions about protection of intellectual properties, establishing legal precedent, or controlling either those businesses or how they can function, or some sort of controls, regulations, and some laws may be passed that are relevant particularly to those areas. And I, when I was writing this blog, which I posted on my blog at lastunka.com a few days ago, I did actually see at the time that on the 9th of December, an antitrust lawsuit was filed against Facebook by FTC and several dozen US states. And it is interesting because back in April of 2018, I actually wrote a short post on my blog, again at lastunka.com, where I did specifically predict difficult times for Facebook in 2020 and then also in 21-22, because we will have this slow sort of moving transit of Saturn and Pluto conjuncting Facebook's natal Mercury. So these would coincide, and I specifically predicted with either some transformation in the company, which could be something like closure, downsizing, corporate restructuring, or splitting into several entities. And of course, this could be definitely I still see that this could be definitely a possibility. It may not happen necessarily in 2020, but definitely in 21, 22, we will have more sort of difficult transits coming to the natal chart of Facebook. And that indeed may involve some major restructuring of the company. Let's see, and in starting this Saturday, upcoming Saturday, the 19th through 23rd of December, generally there may also be increased news about some limitations imposed on international travel, export, religious groups, places of worship, immigration, and higher education. So these restrictions, they could be temporary, but some sort of obstacle, like a legal obstacle, or it could be just a delay, or something that there may be a legal agreement or legal decision is pending, and therefore some of the progress in those areas is temporarily kind of halted. And at the same time, there may also be increased news about, as I mentioned already, aerospace, IT, high tech, and there we may hear about some new long-term large-scale projects. So something like maybe involves both the long-distance communication, long-distance transportation, but also high tech, maybe IT, or something that's like really fast, innovative. So I'm thinking something along the lines of like new high-speed railway project, or like an asteroid mining project, something that involves both space, and kind of innovative technologies, and also applies to transporting things or goods, people across borders or long distances. In terms of the background influence, we are still under this Saturn, Pluto, and of course now also with Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn, although Saturn and Jupiter are about to enter Aquarius, but this kind of intense conjunction among all these planets has an increased probability or to manifest via strong earthquakes or some difficult events, maybe that involve some disasters or accidents, geopolitical shifts in power and leadership. And this week, the strongest influence will be December 16th through 20th. And let's see, and in general, on all the entire year, we have this kind of influence, kind of in the background influence, where we would expect increased focus on various governmental regulations, restructuring, as well as increased anti-governmental protests, violence, and some scandals. Let's see. Then, for the US, the period of September through December, so through the end of this year, there may be increased focus on banks, finance, earnings, assets, rates, debt, financial policies in general, etc., taxes, and there may be some increased news about bankruptcies, financial manipulations, hidden money, illegal payments, corruption, or loss of earnings due to some overly strict governmental regulations or arguments over, profits, earnings, or especially funding for police or military. And these concerns, which, like I said, would be in the air as a general background influence for US October through December, may particularly ignite or reignite rather in late December through very early days of January 2021. For China, the period from October 5 through December 23 is also significant in terms of transits to its natal chart, and there we may expect increased news about pollution, floods, navy, oil, gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, infectious diseases, hospitals, hidden places, secrets, etc. And we could hear either about some restructuring or new leadership. At the same time, there could be some reforms in those areas where maybe a new approach to handling, waste, for example, recycling or pollution is developed, or some maybe there could be some innovations related to, say, tissue regeneration, or of course the vaccinations, or perhaps dealing with like mental health issues, or any treatments that extend life. So it could be something positive along those lines, or it could be the necessity of dealing with excessive floods, pollution that they may bring, congestion in the ports, etc. So either way, somewhat serious, I guess, influence. And at this time, if there are any major changes that are implemented on how to handle, like I said, maybe how some laboratories are run, or how the port congestion is handled, or how, say, pollution or recycling are approached, those changes that are implemented through, like I said, the 23rd approximately of December in China, they may be long lasting, and this could be like this large scale reform where things from now on for the next few decades are done differently. In terms of specifically this coronavirus outbreak, as I mentioned before many times, I think the November was, at least for China, like the most difficult period in terms of just transit to its natal chart, and I think December onward this may be becoming kind of easier and less stressful, perhaps because of the vaccines that are going to be administered, or perhaps of some other issues. But either way, the difficult transits to China's chart specifically were coinciding with increased news about this particular virus globally are going to be becoming less and less intense in the upcoming weeks. And let's see, in terms of news about oil, as well as, of course, gas, chemicals, etc., those will remain strong, or rather more significant than usual throughout, say, February of 2021, but particularly news about all these kind of excessive weather, excessively wet weather, or chemicals, pollutions, or perhaps some even oil spills may pick up from, already starting this month, December. But also I would particularly pay attention in, I'd say, middle to end of January, where there may be news about either some surprising and unexpected developments related to earnings of these businesses, and or perhaps increased market volatility that may affect oil prices or be triggered by oil prices. And this may coincide, especially in January, with some announcements related to like airlines or IT businesses. And so again, these could be related, where perhaps some developments that are related to airlines may affect oil prices and vice versa. And for that, again, things may start already this week in December, but it will pick up, I would say, most likely around 18th to 19th of January. And then in next year, 2021, significant developments related to oil, such as maybe some news, of some differences among, say, OPEC countries, or some discussions among countries who are oil producers, or something related to oil transportation may come up again in April of 2021, especially April 8th through 11th. And then in September of 2021, in particular, September 1st through 3rd. And at that time, again, during those times, rather, I would expect increased either some turbulations in the market, or perhaps a market drop. In terms of specifically looking into the early next year, into January, January looks like a very volatile month. That has both to do with weather, and this time we may expect things that have to do with like excessive winds, or electric storms, or firestorms, or blizzards, depending obviously where you are, which hemisphere you're in. But basically excessive wind and things that may have to do with like power outages or service outages. Things just kind of coming in and out unexpectedly and happening, development after development, coming up super fast. And the entire sort of period of, I would say, January 4th through February 7th looks particularly difficult, and there could all be both some difficulties in terms of like weather events, accidents, and those accidents in particular may involve water, either, you know, gas, flowing water, liquid, and or like ice. So it could be something where maybe something collapses, like a roof, maybe there's too much snow, or maybe there's like a cavern and it's filled with, you know, brine, how we had some years back, and there's perhaps a hole is drilled and some too much liquid or gas or something escapes, and there's this, you know, something collapses because of that. Or again, it could be just a pollution, a maritime accident, or accident involves an oil spill or something like that. And also at the same time, as I mentioned, excessive air or something that moves by air. So it could also be something that involves like a Navy ship that's carrying airplanes or something like that, or an airplane makes an emergency landing on some body of water, or again, something that's injecting rather too much air into something, and that causes there to be a situation where it releases too much water, or basically this combination of air and water together that are not functioning very well. And this may be a weather event, or it could involve some sort of disaster. And in particular, January 10th, 16th, 20th, 24th, 27th through 31st, and then February 6th look, I would say, particularly tense in that regard. And again, this could be something that's being transported, like especially by air, and there's an accident and some chemical is spilled. So I don't know exactly what that might be, but I would say there's a probability of such events, unfortunately, is high, particularly in January. And at the same time, it may also coincide with increased market volatility, and the areas involved would be, again, IT, aerospace, cryptocurrencies, communication, transportation, businesses in general. And there we may hear about increased, agreements or contracts that involve international entities, also new laws passed, including for, you know, import-export, international travel, and let's see, and particularly, I guess, the week of January 11th looks fairly disruptive, and there may be some abrupt events where there's some sudden turnabouts of some projects that are being abruptly stopped, and again, could be maybe social media or communication, transportation type projects. And there may also be news about either somebody being granted some additional rights or freedoms, or those are being taken away, or somebody who's like a wealthy leader acting in exceptionally eccentric manner. So either way, some sort of a turbulent month. And for US in particular, the 20th of January is an important day, obviously. I believe there's a day where there is a presidential inauguration. But curiously, this particular day also we will see Mars conjuncting Uranus, and then both will be squaring Jupiter and Saturn. And again, this is a day where we may just have maybe excessively kind of windy weather, some storms, etc. Or at the same time, there may also be just unexpected outages or unexpected developments, including increased probability of, like, again, that's just for the entire country, but like fires, explosions, accidents, power outages, and market volatility, especially for forex and cryptocurrencies. And whether it just coincides with this particular day, but I thought that was interesting that that particular day, obviously a significant day in general, happens to have such difficult transits. Let's see. For generally speaking, let's see, January, as I mentioned, is going to be a somewhat difficult day. And then since we're talking about the US, to kind of take a quick glance into 22-23, it will be regardless of basically what may be happening sort of on the ground, so to speak. In terms of astrology, it will be an interesting time for the US because it will be undergoing two sort of important transits, where one, it will be Neptune getting into its fourth house, which has to do with like banks, real estate, sort of, the food production, agriculture, and safety and security. Of course, food is safety, and perhaps also it may involve families as well, particularly women and children. So there with Neptune, we may expect either, say, excessive floods or some confusion or pollution. Say maybe there's excessive flooding and it pollutes farmlands, and obviously it may trigger some concerns about food safety, for example. Or there may be mortgages underwater, some sort of changes related to real estate, and obviously it would affect banks' assets. But definitely some changes that are fairly, I would say, significant. And again, there may be this ongoing kind of confusion or lack of information, or something that's not being quite obvious. And again, that's kind of on the same time, in addition to that particular transit, 22-23 for the US will see a exact sort of passage of transiting Pluto over the Pluto where it was in the US when it was founded, which is basically otherwise known as Pluto return. And since Pluto orbits so slowly, it doesn't happen very often, and it would be a major change in the country's sort of organization in terms of its leadership, its power structure, in terms of how the country governs itself. And also, since Pluto is in the US second chart, at least in the chart that I'm using for US to make predictions, that particular house has to do with banks, financial institutions, but also values in general. So I would expect that there will be, again, changes in terms of like financial institutions, financial structures, and also sort of who's in power or what is powerful. That is, there may be changes in the values. So something that maybe was a valuable investment before this time, 22-23, may no longer be valuable at all. Pluto definitely is a planet that makes these very drastic changes. So certain things just completely may lose value, and vice versa. Things that were not valuable previously may suddenly become very valuable. And there may also be, like I said, general restructuring, especially in the financial sort of area. So that's it. That's my general prediction for this week, and sort of giving you a little bit of a heads up in terms of what might be coming in the future. And I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll come back and check me out next week. Until then, have a great one. Bye.